Hello and welcome to the Mum Boss Method podcast. I'm Chrissy, but you know that. And I am joined by a lovely guest today, Talia Zamora, who is joining me to talk about neurodiversity. We're going to talk about menopause, neurodiversity, women, difficult conversations. We're not scripted. We know a little bit about what we want to do, go where we want to go in this conversation, but we've both just agreed that we just like to take it organic. So, Talia, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me here. Yeah, I do like that. Taking it organically, just see how we go, see what
Yeah,
comes up, see what
yeah,
questions come from the audience.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
Love
that's
it.
great.
Yeah. So, my darling, tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it, because I think the why is really important as well.
Yeah, the why is huge. But who I am is Talia Zamora. So I am a neurodivergent myself with a very neurodivergent family, including two teen boys. I what I do is I work with women in business and families for neurodivergent families. So two kind of different angles, but at the end of the day, all of it is all about coaching and helping whoever's in front of me to get from where they are to where they want to be.
Mm.
And it's nothing too hard and fast. It's nothing arduous. It's all about little tiny little steps that can be taken and little things that can be done, whether it's with communication, whether it's with a light bulb in the room that needs to change, whether it's wearing ear defenders or listening to music, whether it's changing diets, whether it's going out at a certain time of the day and or wearing a different clothing that is more comfortable. There's so many different things that come into it. I've if you're on LinkedIn, I've been doing traits. I don't know if I shared this with you actually, Chrissy, but I've been talking about different traits on neurodivergent traits, just in little shorts, 1 minute kind of videos. So if there is anybody that wants a little bit more, if than this, then they can hear it there. But
Mm.
yes, so essentially, I coach on a one-to-one or one-to-two of its parents, and help people to make little changes, positive ones.
Love that.
So,
Have
and
you
then the why
always
bit.
done
Sorry,
this?
I didn't.
Yeah. Have you always done this? Why do you do it now?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so I haven't always done this. I worked for the University of Hertfordshire for years, working on different programs and work introducing an online program, and then also doing business improvement, and then moved on and did business improvement elsewhere, and then started working for myself, having done so much business improvement. I thought I want to help women in business. I was very, very passionate. Having done a leadership program for women, I was very passionate about the stats of how many women go to university and they drop off after they have children and don't go back to using their degree or specialism. How many women just have all those years of study and don't get to do something with it. And so it was just something that I thought actually all these women that are making small businesses, statistically small businesses don't last for more than 5 years, like a large percentage of them that don't go for very long, people give up. So yeah, I was very passionate about helping that whole having your cake and eating it for a mum, in particular, being able to run a business and be there for the kids and do all the things to make home that we end up doing as well, being a taxi driver. So yeah, I just wanted to help mums to do it realistically. And in the background, I was learning and studying and training all about neurodivergence, one thing after another. If you start getting into it, it's like a rabbit hole. There's more and more tiny little things about it, whether it's rejection sensitivity or whether it's pathological demand avoidance or whether it's a bit of OCD. You have all these things that start coming out the woodwork when you start studying and learning and connecting with people. So yeah, it's kind of that coaching that started as with a heavy business focus. It's still the business focus is there, but it's molded into women with neurodivergence or families with neurodivergence because I've learned so much and then gone on and done like certification, sorry, words. But so yeah, it's yeah, I'm still passionate about helping those people that want to have a little bit of something for themselves and earn a little bit of money in a flexible way, and also then be there for their family and themselves.
Love it. Thank you. So we're
So,
like we say, we're going to talk about neurodivergence today, but let's maybe start by talking about what we mean by that, because I think, we hear the terms neurodiversity, neurospicy, on the opposite side, neurotypical. What do we mean when we say neurodivergence? How do you describe that?
So I describe that as somebody that has a slightly different learning or behaviour style than the norm, although that's arguable too because of percentages. You know, who knows what the percentage really is? But yeah, somebody that's slightly different, and that can shine through with maybe your social behaviour or your learning style in the classroom. And it's like an umbrella term, and so within that you're looking at autism or ADHD or OCD or Tourette's, any number of things, but as well as dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. So there's quite it's very broad,
Mm,
but it's all under one umbrella, and it makes sense for it to be under one umbrella because so many people actually have more than one thing going on. So it's great to be able to connect the dots and understand certain behaviors and because of what reason and what you can do excuse me to nurture that and help the person with the need.
yeah. And when I kind of polled my community, both on social media, but also inside my client community, what I had back was so many of the women saying, thank you for having this conversation. And I've got a few questions that were posed to us, but the majority of the statements and sentiments were, thank you for having this conversation because I'm late to diagnosis and I'm learning so much about myself. And it's so important to understand. Oh, just knocked my microphone. Sorry if that deafened anyone.
Okay.
Um, I was late to diagnosis and I'm still learning how my neurospiciness affects my day-to-day living, but also their work with me and how they need to adapt because self-care is something that so many of them find very difficult for varying reasons.
Mm,
Yes, we've got some questions, but we have also got so many women just cheering and saying they cannot wait to tune into this when it's released because it's not spoken about enough.
yeah, it's so true, and that late diagnosis bit is huge. There's so many people, especially women, because and I say especially women because traditionally ADHD and autism is seen as a male dominant kind of difference, where actually it's just that women have different traits and they show up differently. And so, yeah, I think that the conversation is really, really valuable so that people can understand what's going on for them. And it is a bit of a shock though, and there's a lot of grief that comes in with that
Mm,
um, for your younger self and the experiences you've had in life.
yeah,
Yeah, it can be really emotional, but it's really valuable to kind of be able to, especially if you're this time of the life like us too,
yeah.
you get to that certain point where actually, you know what, looking inward, taking care of yourself, understanding yourself better, you may have a little bit more time, mental capacity, hopefully, to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so in my research, and I explained to Talia before we hit record that I've had my head in a rabbit hole for the last couple of weeks around this. And I think every time I uncovered something that was new for me, it then sent me off in a different direction. And I firstly, having the menopause education background that I have, I am hugely vocal about there is not enough research done into menopause, perimenopause, women's hormonal health in general, because and that's getting better, but because so many medical studies historically have always been based on men, and then all of a sudden, we're now shouting about menopause so much louder, and there's this need to catch up. But as you just said, I don't know any percentages, but there are so many women who are diagnosed late with
Mm.
some of these neurodivergent you know, what is the right word to say with I don't,
I normally say traits,
traits.
but
Brilliant.
yeah,
That's what
so
I'm going to
they're
say.
just, yeah. You could say neurodivergent differences, but yeah, I
Yeah,
find
traits.
traits is easy. Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so and that is because, again, my understanding is because so much of the research has been done on men and boys, but also
Mm.
my understanding is also, and I don't know whether this is something you can educate me on, that often men and boys have a more outward display of these traits than women.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite significant, especially when it comes to masking, that
Mm.
women significantly mask a lot more than men do, and they mirror what other people are doing and the group that they're in. Whereas actually with men and boys, they don't do that so much. So yeah, it looks very different because of the female behaviour isn't as out there.
Mm.
So they will hide it and they'll, yeah, tuck it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about how neurodivergent traits show up for women, what do your conversations and your knowledge and your education show you are some of the most typical things that show up?
I'd say some of the most typical, especially at this time of life. So
Yeah,
if we're talking about this bit
yeah.
where our hormones start changing and we get to a point where, like your food, your lifestyle, your sleep, all those things, your the things that you're drawn towards doing and spending your time, your energy levels, the friends as well as a biggie. Like, and as you probably know, it's not the percentage of divorces go up at this time of your life too. So there's lots of like dramatic change and different jobs and all that kind of things that are quite big in your life. So there is definitely more of a significance when it comes to somebody that's got ADHD. And it's a bigger shock when you get to this point and you didn't realize you were ADHD before. So that brain fog and that nervous system that's shifted, and those hormones that are bringing those big emotions out, those kind of things become quite significant to the point you think, hold on, what's going on and why? Why can't I finish a job that I started? Why can I not concentrate on a film that I'm watching? Why am I struggling so much with this email that I need to write? Just these little things start happening, and you start observing about your behavior and think, actually, is this just menopause or is there something else going on? And it kind of, yeah, can be really hard to decipher.
Yeah. And of course can also be both of them mixed together.
Exactly. Yeah. But
I
you've got to
go
go
on.
through the motion a little bit to realize
Yeah.
actually there's something else going on and it's not just one thing, it's two.
Yeah. I've always said brain fog has been my most annoying menopause symptom. It's the one I find the most that and lack of sleep. That is the
Hmm.
it's the
I'm with you on
most
both.
frustrating to be in the middle of something and forget the word that is a word I use every day, several times a day, or forget what I was doing, and it's that societal joke, isn't it? I remember we used to say it about my mum. She'd walk into a room and go, "What did I want in here?" And we'd just go, "Oh, here she
That's
goes.
me.
Here she goes again." And now I do it
Yeah, all the
regularly.
time.
What was I going to say? What was I going to say? I'm on coaching calls with my clients. I'm like, I was going to say something really profound, and it's gone. Um, but the the and I use HRT, and that has been great for my menopause symptoms.
That's
But
good.
certainly, I have noticed, and again, something we were speaking about before I hit record was in doing this research, I've gone down some rabbit holes, and now I've got some real kind of thoughts around myself. And I explained to Talia that I was reading a book last night in the bath, and I burst into tears when I read this particular
Oh,
chapter.
there you go. It is so emotional.
Yeah. That just made so many things so clear to me about friendships and relationships and some of the behaviors that have been even more amplified for me in the last 9 years. And one of them is very, very prominent at the moment. But
Mm.
we have at this time of our lives, you have so many things to think about, I believe. So many things to think about. And I talk to women about this when they come to me and they say, because a lot of women come to me and they want to lose weight. And that's not all women that come to me want to lose weight, but a lot of them, I would say, 70 to 80% of the women I work with want to lose weight. And they're late 30s into 40s and 50s. And they say the things that used to work just don't work for me. And what I explain is that the law of thermodynamics, so the calories in versus calories out, doesn't change because our hormones change, but life changes. Because
Mm.
if we all think about our lives now, I consider my life being so much more complicated than it was 20 years ago. When I was 25, I needed to make sure I paid my rent and that I went to work, and that was it.
Yeah, and now look at
That
it.
was it. And now I have a teenager who has his own ups and downs. I'm running a business, as is my husband. I have a needy cocker spaniel. My parents are older. There's, health concerns within the family. There's the stresses and strains of normal life, plus everything else that's going on and changing within our bodies. Life is more complicated. So when
Mm.
you then add on hormonal changes, plus, you know, neurospiciness and those traits, it's no wonder that this time of our life is so challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, what do you look at first? What do you nurture first? What do you work on to help you feel better? There's so many things, and not necessarily the time or the finances to kind of do everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's like going to yoga for classes, or buying more supplements, or eating better food, or doing long walks in the morning. It's yeah, there's so many. All of a sudden, that self-care list becomes so long. It's really a minefield.
Absolutely. And I think actually that's a great segue into the next question, which is why is self-care so challenging when you have neurodivergent traits? And I think I wanted to just say that even without those traits, self-care can be really difficult because if you are the caregiver for a family, elderly parents, you're running a business or you're holding down a full-time job plus running a house, self-care is challenging. Self-care is challenging when you've got toddlers. Self-care is challenging because you have
Mm.
to make a decision to prioritize yourself at some time at some points. But I know with my clients and friends who have neurodivergent traits that sometimes, things like remembering to eat well or not relying on sugar, highly sugared or highly caffeinated products, or finding the motivation to work out can be really, really difficult. So why is that? Why do those with these traits find self-care so challenging?
I think some of these answers are going to be the same for everybody, but I suppose when it comes to being neurodivergent, you can have a lot more challenges in many ways. I think, like anybody, a lot of it can be down to guilt. So it's guilt whether you're using time just for you, or spending money just for you. Like even the gym ticks both of those boxes. Um, but the next bit I'd say, which is more of a neurodivergent thing, is about the habit and getting the dopamine that you want from it. So that's not necessarily the gym. Quite often for a neurodivergent, going to the gym can be really, really rewarding, but it's the motivation to get there, get the towel, get the outfit, get in the car when it's cold. That's the barrier. So it's about having and building habits that you feel like that are easy. Some people will put their gym kit out the night before and their bag ready by the door and have set number of alarms because they know they're going to procrastinate when they wake up. They're not going to want to do it. But it's the same as having a nutritional lunch. Think, oh, I just need a little bit to do a little bit more work, or I just need to pop out to the shops. I'll eat when I get back. If you're not making enough time and putting yourself as a priority,
Mm.
then you're going to just go, like you said, for the sugary foods instead of a decent lunch. And so building the habits is the hard can be part of the hardest bit because and the procrastination and that heavy weight that how am I going to do this? And sometimes those habits that you've got for yourself can be way too big and maybe you need to break them down really, really small.
Mm.
So for instance, having a 10-minute walk instead of thinking to yourself, actually, I need to get 10,000 steps in a day, so I'm going to have to go for a 2-hour walk and then never doing it because you haven't got time or motivation to do it. So if you break things down and do it, start with baby steps, that's where it becomes a bit easier and becomes more doable and more rewarding. You think, oh, I achieved a 10-minute walk today. I've
Mm.
done really well. I'm really proud of myself for that. Instead of thinking I didn't move and I didn't do any of my steps and I haven't had 2 hours to spare because who has got 2 hours to spare to go for a walk, unless you walk and talk and work at the same time. So yeah, it's for neurodivergent. It's definitely about not overthinking it, making it really small, making sure it's not too overwhelming, making it simple. Um, so yeah, I often use an analogy with work clients that if you put on your to-do list, I need to do my website, you'll never do it. It will just stay on that to-do
Yeah.
list. You say what you need to do is go onto your website and have a look at your about page and think, okay, I need to go on my about page and I need to update my profile and my photo. And you've got two clear things there to do. And then you could say, I need to update a link and I need to update the footer instead of this whole extreme thing. And I'm sure you have that with women that are trying to lose weight. That actually, I need to lose 3 stone, but to start doing it and getting fit, and there's so many multiple things, the diet, the time scale, all that, it becomes like, I can't do it. I'll do it
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Just start with the first pound and just start with the first day.
Yeah, exactly. But then for the neurodivergent woman, it's also about starting with making sure you put an alarm on and making sure that you've maybe got an accountability buddy to
Mm.
prompt you and say to you, how are you doing? Are you up? Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Even whether it's your child in the bedroom next door, mum, have you got your trainers on? That kind of thing. Just building in things that you know that will help you and motivate you and you won't want to say no to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I resonate with this so much because I couldn't understand why I had these big projects. And in fact, you've just made something click as well into for me. I've got a couple of things that I want to do for next year, and they're just on my list as the things. And I keep looking at them and moving them to the next day because I've not broken them down. And I
mhm.
recently found Notion in business.
Yeah, that's great.
Do
A great
you
app.
use Notion?
I prefer Trello, but I
Okay.
use Notion actually with my web designer. She uses it,
Yeah.
so that's where I use it mainly. And I've used it with a VA before. It is great, but then yeah, I've also used a couple of other different ones like Asana. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're all
And I
really brilliant.
they're all really great, aren't they? And I think because I tried both Trello, sorry, we're going to go into like a project management discussion
Yeah,
now for
yes,
everyone listening,
little
but
chat.
I use
Sidetrack.
I use Notion for my personal life as well because I found it and I love the way I can break something down into even if one thing means 100 tasks, breaking it down
Yes.
into 100 tasks means I can then achieve it in bite-sized
But
chunks.
think all the ticks that you get,
All the
all the
tick.
ticks, all the dopamine that keeps on hitting, that satisfaction that, oh, I've done it, I've
Yeah,
done more, I've done more. So
yeah,
yeah,
I love it.
that's huge in itself because um, one thing sorry to sidetrack again on
No,
business,
it's
but one
okay.
thing I often say to some of my clients that because motivation and dopamine is a big part of why some people just don't get things done and their company, their job, whatever becomes boring to them because it's monotonous. So sometimes you need to highlight for yourself what you're achieving. And if you have a long list like you were talking about and moving them all the time and never achieving anything, there's no excitement, joy, or satisfaction that comes through. So if you ever have continual days like that or just one, just get a piece of paper and write down all the things that you have done and in minor detail, like even
Yeah,
down to emptying the bin, just all the little things. I put laundry on, I did 3 emails, I called somebody up and followed up, I've arranged a meeting, all those little tiny things, and then just tick them all, big
yeah,
fat ticks,
yeah,
the joy that comes from that actually I have achieved a hell of a lot today.
yeah,
They just weren't on my to-do list.
yeah,
We will
yeah.
divert, we will try and do anything that's not on that list.
So true. So true. And if I think about how I have always behaved since leaving school and getting a job, I have always been the type of person that will put something on the to-do list that I did 10 minutes ago just so I can tick it off.
Yes. Yeah, you knew you needed that tick. It was
Yeah,
brilliant.
I needed the tick. So on the flip side, this is me just thinking about my behavior, but I know I can think of about three clients that this is going to help. So how doing the job I do, I need to be present on social media often, but I find it really hard not to get sucked into the scroll hole of my phone.
Yeah.
What do you do for that?
So for me, do you know what? I do get trapped in it because my kids send me stuff, and like it's for instance when you get something like an Instagram short,
Yeah,
you don't just watch one and then put it down. You 20 minutes later you find yourself that you've just been doing it constantly because they've sent me one. But I don't get a lot of joy out of it, and I know a lot of people do. But I do give myself time because switching your brain off to that extent and that escapism is quite relaxing,
yeah,
and you're not thinking about the big wide world and all the things, all the logistics of your life. So it's good to actually let yourself do that every now and again, and
mm,
do it guilt free without that feeling that I shouldn't be doing this right now. Some people will sit and read a book, some people will sit and doom scroll. It's okay to have that time. But
mm,
for me, I can get, uh, I can find myself doing it and then think to myself, okay, you've had enough. And maybe you need to be drinking, walking, eating something because your energy's dropping, or
yeah,
shake it off a bit and do something else. But sometimes there's also giving yourself a different reward. Whether
yeah,
it's picking up the phone and calling a friend and saying how are you, or sending little notes to siblings or something that that they'll think are funny. So yeah, giving yourself something else to go to instead of saying now you just have to stop.
yeah.
So if you've got a different focus, it's a lot easier.
I think there's real merit in having like a variety of these. I am actually even going to call them numbing tools because scrolling can be numbing. Um, And I could quite easily term it as research for my business and tick that off my list for the day. But I don't need to be doing it for 3 hours. But just activities that take you out of where your head has been stuck for the last couple of hours. I overthink. I could always, as a business owner, and you'll know this, but I think as a mum, as a woman, our to-do lists never get shorter. They
No.
never get shorter. In a
And it's worrying if it's short. You look at it and think,
Yeah,
what
what
have
have
I
I
forgotten?
forgotten? Yeah. So having, those things around you, I've got an actual colouring book just on my bookshelf there, and I've got pens and pencils next to it. So if I want to do pencil
That's
colouring,
lovely.
if I
I
want
do
to,
the same. I'll put an Audible on and sit
yeah,
and colour
yeah.
so that I
I've
switch off.
I've got if I'm know I'm going to be on a train, and sometimes I find trains really overstimulating. But then I don't want to listen to anything because that's going to add to the stimulation. So I'll put my
Mm.
earplugs in. I've got a colouring app on my iPad. So if I'm
Oh, fun.
of
Oh, nice.
down, but then I've got crafting stuff downstairs. So I've got to stop me scrolling my phone while I'm actually sitting having time with my husband and my son, and we're maybe watching a family movie. I've got a cross stitch that I can do whilst I'm watching.
Brilliant.
Because I need to have my hands have to do something, otherwise I will pick up my phone. And I just think it's really useful to have a little toolkit of things that we can do that do help us to step out, wind down, switch off, and that it's okay for sometimes for those to be social media, but it doesn't have to be that thing all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be conscious of it and allow yourself that time is the best way. That self-awareness.
Yeah,
And instead of my husband, when I say to me, doing it again, it's like, no, I don't. I'm not bothered. I'm like, you're just like the kids. No, I'm not. So it just makes me laugh. You just admit to it. Just say it's
yeah,
okay, Like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I want him to admit to it because he always gives them a hard time for doing it. I'm thinking, well, you're doing it, so why can't they?
I can't.
Um, so, but yeah, in being upfront about it, think, yep, hands up, I do that, but actually, I need to be aware of it and introduce things like cross stitch, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah,
So then that way, being honest with yourself, you can do it without the guilt because you're
yeah,
not really pretending, are you?
exactly. Can we just talk about masking? Because I think we started touching on it earlier, and I was just reminded myself of what one of my clients had said in her message when I'd asked the question yesterday. But women spend such a long time masking. What do we mean when we say masking, and why do we do it?
So what we mean by masking is when you're not, you're in a situation where you're not particularly comfortable, and you want to fit in. You don't feel like maybe you're thinking people aren't going to like me, or these are not my kind of people. What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? Um, or you're somebody also maybe with ADHD and you want to move around a lot and you find it really hard to sit. And you've got to kind of mask your way through it, like in a classroom, and to behave and conform and do things that you're being asked of to do when actually it's a big challenge for you.
Mm,
Um, say if you worked for a supermarket and you were stacking shelves and you weren't allowed to have regular breaks and it was constant monotonous, um, if you were controlling yourself to do something that you need to do for somebody else, the minute you come away from it, quite often you can have a meltdown or an outburst or a big emotional upset. Some people will find strategies like what you were talking about with the television and a bit of family time. You'll find strategies that will work for you. So maybe somebody that's conforming in a workplace and behaving in a way that they need to behave to complete the job, but also to fit in.
mm,
They might come out and be somebody that goes straight to the gym or straight for a run, or cook because that's therapeutic to them. So
mm,
as adults, you find strategies that actually means that you can transition and reshift the energy and the nervous system,
mm.
because you've had to be doing something that really doesn't work for you. So, and like even having a meeting, regular meetings, and there's 10 people in the room in the office, and you want to say what you want to say, but you don't feel like they're gonna want to hear it, or that everybody needs to have their turn, and you can't go on for too long. You're having to hold it back and put that face on. Think, yeah, I'm listening. You're not listening at all because there's 100 things going on in your head, but you're putting a mask on so that you look like you're fitting in and that you're part of the team.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah, that,
sense?
that absolutely makes sense. I was thinking about my corporate days and how I used to get around the really long meetings. I think this is why I I worked in learning and development because I could be the one stood at the front of the room doing the walking around and the talking.
Yeah, you didn't have to sit still for too long.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to the finding the strategies, I think one of the things that I always say to my clients, I don't struggle with my consistency with workouts. That's not so I do not have to pry myself into the gym. It's just not something that I need to do.
Because it's a habit that you've made and that
Yeah,
you really get a lot of joy out of and that adrenaline from. So yeah, it's once you've instilled it,
yeah.
you don't want to be without it.
No, but it sets me up for a, my days. And I find I've been ill for the last week. So I went to the gym this morning, but I hadn't been since last
Mm,
Tuesday before then. And okay, I couldn't have gone, but I can feel the difference in my concentration levels when I move first thing in the morning.
mm,
It's amazing.
yeah, yeah,
But yes, it
that's
took,
huge.
I
Yeah.
wasn't always like that. Before I was 30, yes, you would have had to have pushed me into the gym.
Yeah. No, I'm the same with walking my dog. Like I mentioned to you earlier that I had an operation, so I was out of action for a bit and I couldn't walk, and that I really, really missed that. But I haven't been doing yoga because of the operation, and I'm at that point in my mind thinking, Talia, you need to go back. You need to go back because otherwise you're going to lose that because it's been a month now. But I'm not healed enough, and I'm thinking, should I just do it and to stop doing certain moves that are going to be hurt me and just get on with it. So I've got these little, voices in
Yeah,
my shoulders saying, "You don't lose it," because you could easily think, "Oh, I can't be bothered anymore." But
yeah. I know
I
it's
can feel it
hard.
happening. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
hard. It's
it's
so
really hard, but
yeah,
so valuable once you get into that swing and that motion of it. And
yeah,
getting started is to me, it's like a hamster wheel,
yeah, absolutely.
really hard to get it going. But once
Yeah,
you start speeding up and you get the rhythm, it's great. It's like it carries on. And it can slow down every now and again, but I've
yeah,
stopped and come off. So I really need to get back on.
yeah, yeah. Just bringing in the menopause thing quickly. I was at an event 2 weeks ago, and I heard a really interesting. Let me bring the note up on my phone. A really interesting point that I don't think I realised, and I thought I would share it with you actually. I don't think I realised or had probably heard about this. Or maybe I just didn't read it in my when I was being educated on menopause and take it this way. But our in perimenopause, our oxytocin also lowers, as well as your progesterone, your estrogen, and your testosterone. So we start prioritizing ourselves more. And the woman who said this, I'm getting her on my podcast in December. She said, so we start waking up like a man, whereas we just have to think about ourselves. I loved it. I just loved it. But I thought
You're funny.
that's really interesting because obviously oxytocin, I'm going to get this wrong, but oxytocin is like,
That joy,
the joy, that the nurturing type hormone. And if that's lowering, it is, you know, easier to prioritize ourselves. And I think that this is, for me, this was one of the reasons why I then fell into this rabbit hole 2 weeks ago, knowing I was speaking to you today, is because it just occurred to me that if women are being diagnosed later, well, hopefully that trend will, soon start undoing itself as we talk about this more. But also, we're getting to this stage in our lives where our hormones are fluctuating anyway. But if oxytocin is also reducing, it's no wonder why so many of these daily processes, relationships, you know, routines and rituals start to look and feel a bit different. And I guess um for me, and I'm that was my stomach being really loud because apparently I'm hungry again. Um, so um, for me anyway, one of the things that I really noticed when I've been doing this research is this point around relationships and particularly friendships. And you mentioned this earlier, but the chapter I read last night that made me cry was about RSD
Mm.
and how so that is, can you remind me what that stands for?
Rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Right. So something that I have, now this is the first time I've ever going to have spoken about this, but something that I have always really struggled with is if friends are spending time together away from me. So I
Mm.
tend to have a friend and they're my friend. I don't really have one big group of friends. And I always put it down to the fact that, I didn't really stay in contact with a lot of people from school and I've just never really had like a big group of friends. And when I read this chapter last night about RSD, I realized I don't like having a group of friends because if there is three of us and the other two go and spend time together, I feel rejected.
Mm.
It's
It's
huge.
massive. But that feeling of rejection is not what you'd envisage what rejection is. It literally hurts.
It's
It's
grief.
like a physical pain.
It's grief. It
Yeah.
feels like grief to me.
Mm.
And I think that this is potentially like even another follow-up conversation. And I've talked to you about I'm just bringing so many of these difficult conversations to the forefront at the minute. But so this could be a follow-up conversation for us. But just how, and in business as well,
Oh
rejection,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
putting
mega.
my
But
putting
I
myself
don't.
out there to,
Yeah,
in a
I don't
safe.
like I don't like doing any kind of marketing or sales because of that whole rejection. But also, it feels icky just to be selling myself. I just the whole thing. But it does also come
Yeah,
down to that. So that there's a lot of people running businesses that could have a bank of 20 great clients. They could have a discovery call with one client who then rejects them the following day, and they've forgotten about how many wonderful clients they've got. And this one client that said no, that they probably didn't even want to work with anyway. There's just they're literally in bed for 3 days, or mentally shutting down for 3 days anyway. I don't know if your book would have said, but there is a 3 day kind of cycle
yeah,
before it kind of starts easing off.
yeah,
So yeah, it's really traumatic. Um,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
mega.
And in what both you and I do, we do, people buy us, and so whether we like it or not, there is marketing involved in our jobs. And I remember a few years ago, someone from my school, one of the girls from my year at school, joined one of my programs, and then half an hour later said, actually, I've decided I don't want to. Can I have a refund? And I literally couldn't show my face in my business for a week.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
now
Must have
and
been
I get
mortified.
it now. I get
Yeah.
it. So I think a bit of education goes a very long way in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's that self-acceptance bit. Now that you can unpick that rejection sensitivity in your own behavior, why you do certain things, you can be kinder to yourself about it and
Yeah,
more understanding, and then do things in a slightly different way. So for one of my kids, up until his um, teen years, obviously I was doing all his play dates and organising stuff, and there was no rejection really, apart from if somebody was poorly and we had to cancel last minute. He didn't experience much of it. And still to this day, there's an element of play date kind of times that I do on purpose for him because he isn't particularly sociable because he can't stand the idea of being rejected. He can't
no,
do it.
no.
So it's crippling.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fresh to me. I literally read this at 7:30 last night, and
Mm.
a whole load of doors and a load more questions came up in my head. So I'm still on the journey, but my goodness, yeah, I'm so sorry. You're like getting the fresh me,
No, it's okay. I mean, this is late discovery, isn't it? It's all these things that you start discovering about yourself and think, oh my goodness, I wish I'd known this years ago. I could have done this so differently. I could have been so much nicer to myself, understanding to myself. Yeah,
It's
it's
incredible.
hard to deal with, but it's valuable.
Yeah, so yeah, we definitely need to book in a follow-up conversation. Okay, I'm going to ask you my last question because otherwise we're going to be here all afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, give me your top 2 to 3 strategies and or tips for women. I'm going to use that midlife term. I don't like it, but I'm going to say midlife women who really want to move forward with their neurodivergent traits and their life. What are your top 3?
So I'd say the top one is about being that imposter. So you start discovering and you think, no, that surely my mum would have told me, surely the doctors, the teachers, or whatever, when I was 10 would have said something. That's not me. I'm not autistic. I'm not ADHD. I don't have OCD. Whatever it is that you start reading and understanding about yourself and stopping yourself accepting about yourself because you need a diagnosis, which you really don't. It doesn't need to be formalized to be official. You can self-diagnose. It might take a bit of time, but then it's okay to be honest about it. And I would suggest to feel less of an imposter is to try and connect with other women in the similar boat. So there's lots and lots of Facebook groups out there that you can go, even some called Late Discovery, and you can go in and connect with people that are similar. And once you've got an affinity, you're going to have less imposter feeling. So that
Yeah.
would be
Love
my first.
that. Love.
Um, so yeah, I think go and do that, and it's okay to be you. That's unmask.
Yeah.
Um, so the next one is going back to self-care, is saying, it's okay to slow down. You don't have to carry on climbing that career ladder that you always dreamt that you would get to, that actually looking at success in a different way. So looking at success that you're putting in boundaries for yourself, looking at success as you're eating better, you're sleeping better, that you're catching up with friends that you're missing out on because you haven't made time for, looking at successes that you've got family time and having nice Sunday lunches together. If you live in a home where you can all eat together, sometimes that's just not the right environment to be in. But finding ways to have family time together.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just looking at your own expectations differently and taking care of yourself in a different way.
Yes.
So
I love that. I love,
thank you. And then the last bit would be, I think, about social norms. And I normally gear this one more towards a parent that is trying to fit in with all the other parents, is trying to, sorry about that, nose wiping. So, parents that are quite often at the school gate talking to Sophie's mum, who's very proud of her child that's 2 steps ahead on book reading and is getting all their homework done, and not falling for that. Oh, my child needs to be doing that, and going home and having big domestic issues with your child because you can't get them to read and can't get them to catch up with Sophie and her mum. So that it's okay not to. It's okay for your child not to be at that stage. It's okay for you not to spend 2 hours a night trying to get your child to do homework when they're really miserable. It's okay to break it down and do it differently.
yeah.
If your child is not wanting to read, that just to find other ways that you don't have to conform to how everybody else does it, so you can measure it on book one, book two, book three, book four. Just put the subtitles on the TV and get them reading that way, or get them to read the poster as you walk past at the bus stop.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just find different ways, and they will learn. So that conforming to what everybody else does, like going swimming on a Sunday morning and having a lovely stroll in the park and then seeing your friends in the afternoon, doing multiple things on a Sunday sometimes is way too much for a neurodivergent family, just the mother, let alone the kids. And it's okay that when it gets to a Monday that you haven't done anything, but you've had a great weekend. You don't have to have gone to the theatre and gone out for dinner and done all these things to fit in with everybody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a big massive birthday party for yourself or your child, because that's overstimulating, and just because everybody else does, it's your 21st, you have to, or it's your 30th, you've got to do this, and you get sucked into doing things that actually don't work for you.
No.
So
Yeah.
yeah, do it your own way.
That's just amazing. Thank you. Right, we're definitely before I'm going to stop the recording and we're talking about a part two because this has been enlightening. I will make
Brilliant.
sure that I put where to find you in the bio, but where do you hang out the most? Is it LinkedIn?
LinkedIn the most. I am on Facebook, but not a huge amount.
No.
And that's more because, as you know, I run Business Women Unlimited St
Yeah.
Albans, so I'm on there for that more than anything. But yeah, my website has got, as I mentioned earlier, a download, like 101 neurodivergent traits. But
Yeah.
then I'm on LinkedIn talking
Yeah.
about them.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to check it out. Thank you so much for today. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank
It's been
you.
great. It's been
Everyone
lovely.
go and check out Talia in all of the places that she hangs out. I'll link them in the show notes. But um come and listen if you well, firstly, if this has resonated with you, please share it. If you know someone that you think it would help, please share it with them.
Mm.
Talia, thank you so much, everyone. I will speak to you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.